I am most certainly in therapy due to my mom's lack of processing her mom's passing. I am most certainly in therapy because of my dad's emphasis on career and financial prowess and success as the defining elements of his value. I am most certainly in therapy because of the problems that my parents didn't process for themselves. Well. Welcome back. This is Not For Everyone, a podcast hosted by a hater and a lover. I'm the lover, and I'm alone today. Not only am I alone, but I am recording this so last minute. It's not even funny. I'm actually in a hotel room right now. It's Tuesday, so this episode comes out on a Thursday. I'm recording this on Tuesday. Usually that's not how our schedule works. I'm in a hotel room in San Francisco for a work trip. I just got back to my room from dinner with my coworkers. Things have been super busy, and not only busy, but stressful, emotional. Everything's okay. It's just hard. Everything's okay, but it's hard. I think that's the motto recently, and I think a lot of people probably relate to that. I recently moved in with my boyfriend to a condo that I bought. So there's layers to that, right? Okay, obviously, first of all, really exciting, but it's a fucking hard step. And especially when you own a place, you are responsible for everything. And I think that they underplay that in the selling process. They're like, oh yeah, you're responsible for the money, but then you get to have fun because you own a place. Yay. And it's kind of more like you're responsible for the money, and then you're responsible for more money and more money and more money, because a bunch of things are going to break in the first month that you live there, even though they didn't come up in the inspection report. And that's just your hazing. You're like welcoming to the club. That's just part of the deal. So we've been dealing with a lot of that, in addition to just the fact that we are new to living together, and there's a big learning curve there. And also the fact that I've had a lot of travel recently for work, more than usual, some personal travel, just like life. Everything happens all at once. When it rains, it pours. So I knew that I had literally like risen my hand. Is that how you say that? I had raised my hand. I had risen my hand. For some reason, saying it risen makes it feel like it's religious, like biblical. But I'm just saying that I put my hand up for this episode. I told Caroline, you're going to be out and about in Mexico with Prince Abby, our editor. And that's wonderful for you too. And I've got it this week. I said that weeks ago. And then the weeks unfolded, and I realized I was going to be out of town for work. And I realized that my sink was going to leak into the unit below mine, and my washing machine was going to need a repair. And that my boyfriend and I were going to be struggling about how to communicate the different tasks associated with living together. And also, what else has happened? I don't know. I'm probably dehydrated and probably like iron deficient. And yeah, things pile up, I guess is my point. And this episode was still here waiting for me, saying, yo, dog, I know things are piling up, but here's one more thing. And so earlier today, I was like, how am I going to do this? At the end of a long day, I flew this morning to San Francisco from Chicago. Then I had to do a bunch of work, and then I had to go out to dinner with my colleagues. How am I going to record an episode after that? I need a break. I need alone time. I just need like a second. And I realized that this is my alone time. And I know that that's probably some like fucked up capitalist productivity mindset where the podcast that I want to be my career in the future, and that is a sponsored episode, so we are making money off of and we are like on the hook for, I'm turning that into something that is my alone time. Like those two things should be at odds. But I really do think it's my alone time because this is a solo episode for me. At the end of the day, I'm sitting on this couch in my hotel room talking to myself for an hour. So I decided that I'm going to look at this as my alone time, my much needed break from all of the things that have been piling up recently. It's my time to be by myself, to make myself laugh, to process certain things, to talk to you guys, which really is talking to myself and helping myself through problems. This is my alone time. So thank you for giving me that, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And if it gets weird, that's because you are intruding on my alone time. Okay? So just to be clear, like kind of what the power dynamic is here, this is my space and you are entering it. And I'm happy to have you here, but it's still mine. I need this. I listed all the things and there's definitely more things that I forgot to list, and this is for me. Thank you so much. Before we get into the episode, I just want to say if you're watching this on YouTube, yes, we have started to put our solo episodes on YouTube, and we do these cute little slideshows of photos of us or photos from our lives, photos of the things that we're describing. So check those out if you are not already aware that they are on YouTube now. For this solo episode, I decided to do like a little slideshow of fan art that we have received because we've gotten more after our request a few weeks ago that you all draw bad artwork of our essences. It's actually quite good artwork that I've been sent. So thank you for everyone who's done that. If you're watching on YouTube, then you'll see, that's what you'll see throughout this recording, since for our solo episodes, we don't record ourselves on video. I asked you all to send me input for this episode. And I want to start with one of the messages that I got because, listen, I don't know if I'm going to be able to give this person advice on their situation, but it is a message that struck me and that sent me on a tangent in my head that I'd like to say out loud and process a little more. And yeah, I don't know if it's going to be helpful to the person, but it is indeed what I would like to say. WHATADO, my parents want to have a close relationship, but I don't want that. I'm almost 33, happily married with 2 small kids. My parents still live in the village I grew up in Germany. I now live in Switzerland with my family. I also have a younger sister that I am close with. So my parents want to have a relationship with me and their grandkids. However, I feel quite burdened by my childhood. I always felt trapped in the village, and there was just a lot of constant conflict in the broader family. I wouldn't say that my parents did something hugely wrong towards me directly. There were small things, of course, but just didn't keep me and my sister away from conflicts as they should have. Like, for example, my dad never properly worked through the death of his father, and this affected us greatly. Or my mom never worked through the conflicts in her family, and so it landed on my sister and me. In short, the relationship is so tainted with conflict, but conflict that isn't actually mine. I just want peace. I don't want to work through the issues because they are not mine. I feel perfectly fine with a very distant relationship, but don't know how to communicate this. WHATADO? This message really struck me. In a couple ways, actually. At first, it struck me because it's about that tricky parental relationship as you become an adult and you form your own life. And I've talked a lot in my solo episodes especially, but of course throughout the whole podcast, about my own journey in that way, breaking the codependent cycles that I've had with my family, individuating from them, especially given that my family is of an immigrant background with a lot of cultural expectations that have been placed on me. And though I want to respect those things, I also want to be my own person. And that's like a lot of what my therapy over the years has focused on. So it really struck me from that regard, because that's a situation that I really relate to and that I understand and I empathize with, and I encourage people to understand better for themselves. I encourage people to set boundaries when it makes sense. I get it. However, I was also really struck by the part of this message in which the person wrote that she feels these issues are her parents and not her own. Her parents never having worked through their own problems. And that being the reason that she doesn't want to continue a relationship with them. Because it's their problems, not hers, and she just wants peace. Listener who wrote in, I really appreciate you. I'm sending you a big hug and a lot of love. And I know that this is a more complicated relationship and situation than you could have written in this short WHATADO to us. And so with acknowledgement of all of that, I'd also like to challenge you and push back on you a little bit. Because when I read your message, my resounding thought at the end of it was like, girl, that's all any of us are in therapy for. I am most certainly in therapy due to my mom's lack of processing her mom's passing. I am most certainly in therapy because of my dad's emphasis on career and financial prowess and success as the defining elements of his value. I am most certainly in therapy because of the problems that my parents didn't process for themselves. That's what all of us are in therapy for. That's what generational trauma is. So while, yes, those are at face value the problems of other people, those people are the ones that shaped you. They're the ones that raised you. They're the ones that modeled everything for you and taught you everything, and who you spent most of your time with in your developing years. Their problems are kind of yours. They're not in the sense that you don't have to solve it for them, and you can't. Like, you processing something that your parent hasn't processed, it's not going to fix it for them. And it's not your job to fix it for them. But for you to have peace, I strongly believe that you need to do that work for yourself. Avoiding is not going to get you there. So I just really was struck by the way that you delineated this problem. Like, those are their things, not mine. As much as we talk on this podcast about setting boundaries and not solving other people's problems for them, when it's your parents, the shit that they didn't deal with in their lives, whether you like it or not, is going to follow you, is going to inform the way that you show up, is already doing that, whether you're conscious of it or not. And so I'm not saying that you need to have a relationship with them. I don't know enough about them and you and what your relationship has been like over the years to advise on that. But I will caution you against getting too comfortable in the idea that their problems are not yours to figure out. Their shortcomings don't affect you. Their shortcomings directly affect you. I think that's exactly the reason why you don't want to have a relationship with them, because you're coherently aware of the fact that their never having worked through their stuff affects you, right? Am I saying anything? This listener WHATADO sent me down like a rabbit hole in my brain when I read it. I think what this WHATADO comes down to for me, and I'm not answering the question that the listener had. I'm answering it in the way that I would if this was my friend. And if my friend said the words to me that this listener wrote in, I would not answer my friend's question about, setting that boundary with their parents because they don't want to have a relationship. I would challenge my friend. And I would challenge them to take a step back, look at the situation from a bird's eye view, get curious about it, poke holes in it, push themselves, and be honest with themselves. Because I think that if you're honest with yourself, you have to acknowledge that you don't get to wash your hands of the problems that your parents tried to wash their hands of. I actually think you're kind of repeating their pattern. I think being honest with ourselves is at the crux of like so many of life's challenges and so many of the DMs that we get. Actually, like sometimes we get DMs and we read them and it just feels like the answer is right there. Like you're writing us, but you already know the truth. And you're too close to it to see that. I think I even had a micro moment of noticing this over the weekend. I talked to Caroline. She called me and she said, I have an issue and I wanted to talk through it with somebody. I want to hear what you think. And she described it and she was like, I'm not upset. It's not bothering me, but la 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 la. La 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 la. Just like that. That's how she says things. And I was like, well, it is bothering you because you texted me about it and then called me about it. And she laughed and was like, yeah, fair enough. I think something that happens, a human thing that happens, is that we don't like to admit to ourselves how much we actually care about something. I think there's a culture of like, be chill. Don't show that you care. Like, don't put that much effort in. Don't be an overthinker. Don't just be chill. Chill out. It's not that big of a deal. This too shall pass. And as much as I preach those things sometimes, and I remind myself of those things sometimes, it's also very fair to just acknowledge that you're bothered by something. And I think being honest with ourselves helps us get to the other side of an issue. If you're caught up saying that something's not bothering you, you're never going to get to the other side because you're not admitting the first step, which is it's bothering you, dog. Anyway, I'm not trying to convince this listener that she's bothered by the relationship with her parents or, the fact that she doesn't have that relationship right now. You might be perfectly content with that. But I do bet that you are affected by their trauma, their unprocessed trauma. I do bet that bothers you, whether you are consciously aware of it or not. It affects you somewhere. And so I would caution you not to try to convince yourself that you're separate from it. You could be separate from them, sure. If that's not a relationship that is important to you, meaningful to you, productive to you, safe for you, that's your prerogative. But I don't think that is the same as separating yourself from their problems and who they are and what they did and didn't process and what they honestly put in you. The gift that they gave you, the gift of their unprocessed trauma. That's for you, baby. All right, guys, I'm going to let you know that as I sit here on this hotel couch, my throat is getting dry and my nasal passageways are starting to get loose. I feel like I'm getting sick. So I don't know how long I'm going to last in this episode. Just if you hear my voice starting to go, it's like 9:45 Pacific, which is 11:45 Central. Wait, yeah, that's correct math. And I feel like I'm getting sick and I'm doing my best. Okay. I want to find some silly submissions. I don't feel like talking about anything real. Okay, this person said hot take nipple piercings. I think they're really hot. I've thought about getting one. I feel like my boobs are maybe too big for a nipple piercing. Like they're already protruding. Do I really need a protrusion off of a protrusion off of a protrusion? That was really hard to say. But I think they look good. I've been told that I should get one. And I think they really are just an indicator that like you like nipple play. It's the same as, this is such a like high school thing, but when people would get tongue piercings and it was kind of an indicator of like, oh, they like to go down on people. 'Cause the tongue piercing can like hit the clitoris. I don't know. Did I make that up? I feel like that's what was said to me when I was a child. What? When I was a teenager and I was aware of people getting tongue piercings. And I think that nipple piercings are kind of a similar vibe. Like there's definitely some sexual enjoyment that can be had from them. But I also just think they look hot. And I don't know. If you're thinking about getting them, I support you. This isn't a fun topic, but I'm just going to address it. Some people have said, do you have family in Lebanon? How are they doing? Thinking of you. That is very, very kind. I do have family in Lebanon. They are doing fine, but they are very scared. I am very scared. The first couple of days of things really escalating there were really emotional for me. And I feel like since then, I've just kind of like numbed myself. And I've had so much else going on that, I don't know, it's all piling up. I'm not doing great. Thank you for asking. I don't want to say more about it than that, but I do have family there. And if you could keep them in your thoughts and prayers, or if you could take some like donation activist action, I'd appreciate. I think this is a hot take submission. Changing as soon as you get home or waiting until bed. I change as soon as I get home. My clothes are off. My bra is off. I change my underwear like 3 times a day. I'm really weird hygienically about that. Like I'm on this 2-day work trip and I brought 7 pairs of underwear. I like to change everything a bunch of times in the day. And if I get home from being out and about and I have no plans to leave again, which is ideal, I will be taking off everything immediately and getting in comfy clothes. I like to call it soft pants. Ryan is the opposite. He will wear his like regular clothes in the house until he goes to bed. And it really irks me. And I will just sing him a song to encourage him to put on soft pants. I'll be like, hard pants are over and soft pants are next. That was really bad. But that's like literally the types of songs that I sing to him. They're not very good. But I'll just kind of like coerce him with my musical prowess to put on soft pants. And he's gotten better at it like 30% of the time. Food ranking for fair/carnival food. Corn dogs. End of segment. Pickles. Okay, somebody wants a hot take on pickles. Listen, I've loved pickles for as long as I can remember. Pickles are having a moment right now, and I find it kind of annoying given that pickles are not new to the scene of my tummy and my tongue. But they're having a moment. I think it's a little bit of overkill. I feel like pickle juice is showing up in every beverage. People are mixing Diet Coke with pickle juice, and it's just like, pickle juice never needed Diet Coke's help, and Diet Coke never needed pickle juice's help. Both of those are like 2 of my favorite liquids, And I just don't feel that they ever needed to be together. We are too obsessed with pickles right now. They are very good. They've always been very good. The fact that they're trending is like strange to me. The internet is weird, and the way that things trend is weird. Please rate potato foods. Okay. Number 1 is French fries. I don't care what you say. It's French fries. I will eat French fries any day of the week. I love them so much. My favorite are shoestring, but you didn't ask me to rank fry shapes. You asked me to rank potatoes. So number 1 is French fries. Number 2 is mashed potatoes. What are the other ones? Number 3 is like, I don't even know what you call it. When you scallop potatoes really thin and like roast them with Parmesan and butter and garlic. That. Not just regular roast potatoes, like the ones that are really like crispy and garlicky and shit. Okay. Then maybe like cream of potato soup. Is that crazy to be my 4th potato ranking? I think it's correct. 5th, how many potatoes are there? Whatever. 5th is going to be regular roasted potatoes. And then 6th is baked potatoes. I'm not a big baked potato girl. It doesn't do anything for me. I feel like they're not good until you top them with stuff. And that's not, I feel like that means that they are not that good. And they must be topped. I need to tell everyone something right now. Caroline's here. She's here and I have to tell her something.
Okay.
I went to a wedding this weekend.
No.
I know, immediate hate. However, it worked out because I was wearing my Skims underwear underneath my bridesmaid dress. That was a light color.
I saw the pics.
Satin.
It's beautiful.
Usually a situation where I would want like 5 different bras at once or something to get everything situated. All I needed were 2 pieces from Skims. Yep. Fits everybody. I couldn't believe it. I was so comfortable. I was so smooth. I felt secure. And I was wearing a bra and underwear. And usually it would just be a whole contraption. I couldn't believe it.
I can believe it because there's a reason, if you're new to the podcast, that Jess and I were screaming about Skims long before they sponsored us. I think it's episode 48 or 49. If you feel like doing a scroll back, we just scream at each other about Skims and how it's the only bra we will ever wear. They were not a sponsor them, but we just accosted them until they agreed to work with us. Just did a closet declutter and my entire underwear drawer is only Skims underwear right now. Goals. I'll say two of my surprising favorites are their boy short and their high-waisted thong. Usually those pieces of underwear, the cut in other brands gives me like a weird line. So I'm like, what can you wear a boy short with? So I never wear those, but I knew the one with Skims would work because it's just seamless all day long and so comfortable and the stretchiest thing ever. And I was correct. So there, I was correct.
The boy short is crazy. I've also talked about how I have double Ds and it's really hard for me to find a bralette that fits and supports and lifts and doesn't dig in. And there's just like so many requirements. Regardless of your bra size, it's so hard to find a bra. The Skims fits everybody. Scoop neck bralette is the one that I have in like 5 different colors. I can't get enough of it. It's the only thing I wear.
It's insane that Skims does such a service both to you with double Ds and me with like an A cup.
Yeah.
And it's really their Fits Everybody collection because they're available in sizes extra, extra small to 4X. You can shop now at skims.com and you freaking better. And when you place your order, be sure to let them know that we sent you because we love them and they love us. I've decided just select podcast in the survey after checkout and select our podcast. You will be so excited to try it if you haven't tried Skims yet. I promise you.
She's correct. Here's a WHATADO I found interesting. I'm choosing WHATADOs today that are like kind of meta. Like they're less, to me, they are less about an issue at hand and they're more about like how you handle things. So we already did that first one. You get what I'm saying there. Here's another one that I find interesting. WHATADO. Pop psychology recommends using largely I statements when beefing with loved ones. However, isn't it always implicit that there is a reason why I feel a certain way in a conflict? If that why is my partner slash friends slash siblings doing, why the heck am I supposed to never say, you did XYZ? Has it seriously become taboo and, quote, toxic to be angry when somebody hurts you and to want them to own their part? So, okay, I statements. I feel like it was a thing when we were growing up and there would be a portrayal of a therapist on a TV show, and therapy was so much more taboo and just not as normalized. There was a lot of stigma around it. But the one thing that we would all think of and associate, I guess there were two things that would be associated with therapists. And one of them was like the laying down, like chaise lounge, which I've never seen in a therapist's office. But I do believe that that was a thing. I've just never seen it myself. And then two, the assertion that we need to speak in I statements. I feel like that just became like the first learning before social media was filled with therapy learnings. That was the learning that we all knew, like, oh, therapists say this. They say that you need to use I statements when expressing yourself in conflict with a loved one. And I do think that that's important. I actually was in a conflict recently enough with somebody who was doing a lot of you did this, you did that. And it felt like an attack. It felt terrible to be on the receiving end. I then had a follow-up conversation with that same person a few days later when they were able to express in a more calm manner, I feel this, I feel that. Their position didn't change in those few days, but the way they communicated it did, and it enabled us to have a much better, healthier, more productive, more safe for me conversation where I didn't feel attacked. So I guess that's really my answer here. Like, yes, people, you can feel some way because somebody's hurt you and they did do XYZ. They did do something to make you feel that way. That's valid. Like, true. But the I statement thing is entirely a communication tactic. It's not that you need to believe that everything is I. This is how I feel about it anyway. I'm not a therapist, just as a reminder. We are not therapists. We are not professionals. But this is how I rationalize these things to be helpful for me. Using I statements is, in my experience, the best way to get my point across so that the other person can actually hear me rather than getting defensive because they feel under attack. If I'm saying you did this, you did that, they are not likely to actually receive what I'm trying to tell them because they're too busy feeling like, oh my God, I'm a horrible person and Jess is trying to, make a case against me to take down my character. And that just takes you into a whole different conversation that is probably not the point of what you're trying to accomplish. But saying, I feel this when you do this, you can still say you do XYZ, but it's preceded by, I feel this when. That immediately is a more approachable conversation to have. So it's a communication tactic. That's what a lot of therapy is about. It's not about right and wrong, and they did this to you, and so you need to go get them for that because that's what's right. It's, they did this to you, but what do you want out of it? Like, do you want them to apologize and hear how they've affected you? Or do you want them to defend themselves because now they feel like a bad person? That's what the I statements are for. All right. Speaking of how you're honestly feeling, this is a topic near and dear to me. I spoke about it a long time ago. The topic of wanting or not wanting children. And we got a really good WHATADO that I think is really relatable, and I've wanted to speak about this before. So, what to do when you have the family planning conversation and your partner definitely does not want kids, and you are unsure if you want kids. Background: the relationship is still very new, but I genuinely believe he is the best guy I've ever dated. He puts in so much effort, has a good head on his shoulders, and makes me feel so secure. To me, it's worth me compromising. I would never expect him to change his mind. but he is worried that I would come to resent him one day if I decided I did want kids. All right. I think what I say here might be controversial, but I feel very assured of it. And I think more women need to hear it. There is a big camp of us that's not sure whether we want kids, or that feels flexible on the topic of kids. I think that this is too much of a binary conversation topic, typically. It's like, either you want them or you don't. It makes it seem as though we should be clear about how we feel on the issue. And it's just a really hard issue to be clear about because there's so many factors. I think it's so oversimplified. Like, you either want to be a mom or you don't. Like, yes, some people feel that, sure. Some people definitely feel just like, no matter what, I want to be a mom. But a lot of us feel like, I don't know, I don't really feel that call. I guess I could be one, but I don't need to. And so then you start to think about, okay, what are the other factors? Well, maybe it's what your partner wants. Maybe it's what you do for a living and how you see your work life, playing out, and how you see your finances playing out, and how important it is to you to have independence and autonomy and this and that. There's all these factors, right? But when you're a person who wants to be a mom and wants kids and knows that for sure, it's like none of those factors really are in play because you know what you want. And you're like, okay, well then I have to find a partner who wants it too. And I have to set up my life in a way where it will work. And great. It's almost like it's clearer for a person who knows they want kids. For a person who knows that they've never felt that call, or that they're not like in need, they don't need to have kids to feel fulfilled in life, it's so much more of a gray area. And I feel like too often those people get lumped into a category of like, okay, so you don't want them. And while that could very well be true, many of those people still end up having kids and being really happy that they did. And so how do those people make that decision? I think that a lot of the times it comes down to your partner. And I think that it shouldn't be so taboo, the idea that you might be flexible on this topic based on what your partner wants. I felt that way. I feel that way. And I felt really ashamed, I think, for a while to admit that, because it comes across as though I don't know what I want and I'll just go with whatever the guy wants. And I think that's extremely unfair to make women in this already difficult position feel that way. But it's very easy for this topic to get misconstrued in that way. Like, oh, so you don't know what you want, so you'll just do whatever he wants. That's not really what it is. It's more that I know that I don't need this thing. But I also know that if I were to do this thing, I think I could be good at it. I think that if I had the right support, if I had a partner who really wanted it, then like, sure, maybe. I don't know. I'm not saying a resounding yes. And some people would argue like it should be a resounding yes or you shouldn't do it. But if I had a partner who really wanted kids, I don't know. I don't think I would end up with that person because I think that person would probably want somebody who equally really wanted them. But there's a lot of people who are just somewhere in the middle, especially in our generation, in like the millennial and Gen Z probably generations of like, maybe, maybe not. It's really expensive. It's really hard. There's pros and cons. I didn't feel my whole life like I needed to be a parent, but that being said, I could do it. I don't know. I think that conversation should be had more. I think it should be allowed that circumstances can determine whether you want something like that or not. And circumstances can include the person you're with. When Ryan and I first started dating, I remember it was like a looming conversation to talk about kids. I think we both knew it was looming without ever having like said that to each other, because we were going on dates and, 1 turned into 3, turned into 6. Like we were spending more and more time together and liking each other a lot, and it just felt like we hadn't gotten to those types of conversations. I think that if either one of us really wanted kids, we would have brought that conversation up on date 2, 3, 4. But neither of us is there, and so it didn't come up quickly because it's not a priority to either of us. But eventually it did come up, and he was the one that brought it up because he is actually very clear and confident that he does not want children. And I, at the time, and I would still identify this way, my mindset was like, I don't think I want them, or I at least know that I don't need to have them. I would be open to changing my mind. I would be open to not even changing my mind. That makes it too binary. I would be open to swaying more in the direction of having them, but there would need to be a lot of circumstances that lined up to make that appealing to me. So I'm not closed to it, but I'm also not like jumping at the need. I'm just kind of somewhere in the middle, and depending on where my life takes me and who I end up with and what their priorities are, I could be fine with either. And I kind of said that to him when we had this conversation. And I basically said, like, I'm okay with the fact that you don't want them. But I also think if I had ended up dating somebody who did want them, I would be considering it more. I don't know. I don't think it's being like a floozy about your life. I don't think that's like irresponsible. I don't think that is the sign of a person who doesn't know what they want. I actually think it's a sign of a person who's being really thoughtful and intentional, because they're saying, here's this thing that I'm questioning. Here's this thing that I'm not sure about. Let me only do it if all the circumstances line up in a way that makes me feel good about doing it. And one of those circumstances, a really big one of them, happens to be the partner you're with and what they want. It's like moving somewhere. It's not the same, but just use this example. Just follow me for a sec. It's like, let's say your partner really wants to live in a big city. They've always said, I want to live in New York. I want to end up in New York City. That's been my goal. And to you, you're like, I would live in a big city, but I'd also live in a suburb. I don't know. I'm kind of flexible. I feel a little more comfortable in a suburb, but I'm also open to a city. I guess I would just have to be there with the right person who makes me feel safe in a city and makes me feel like I can still have the lifestyle I want in a city, and who I think I could have fun with in a city. And then I could be open to it. But like, if it was just me, I would probably not do it. It's the same thing. And so that person meets the guy who really wants to live in New York City and has always wanted that. And they're like, okay, well, he's the right guy. So I'm going to go out on a limb and do this thing that I was never opposed to strictly, but I also was never gung-ho about. But because of this person and what they want and the security that I feel with them, I feel that I can lean a little more in that direction. Being with somebody who really wants kids or being with somebody who really doesn't want kids, if you're a person who has a little bit more flexibility and depends a lot on those circumstances, then I get how your life could look different depending on which person you end up with. What you're prioritizing is the security of the relationship, the lifestyle that you want. You just have other priorities. Like, that's how I feel. I feel like my priority first and foremost is the romantic relationship in my life, and like making sure that that's really solid and secure. And that's much more important to me, to have that person. Like, marriage is something I want. It's much more important for me to have that person and have that marriage for life than it is to have kids. I've always felt that way. I've always pictured myself getting married. I've not pictured myself having kids. That doesn't mean I can't picture myself having kids, but it's not what the dreams are made of. The dreams have been made of marriage and some career aspirations and all that. They haven't been made of, raising a family. That doesn't mean it's blocked and I can't picture it and it could never happen. It's just kind of like, yeah, that's a maybe, but all the other stuff is my higher priority. The other stuff comes first. Hi, this is Jess the next day editing this episode, and I'd just like to acknowledge how out of breath I was by the end of that segment. I was so exhausted and just like trying to stay awake through it, if I'm honest with you, that I was pacing around my hotel room carrying my laptop and the microphone, and so there was a lot of rustling, there was a lot of panting. It's a topic I'm passionate about, and I was really tired and I was feeling like I was getting sick. And anyway, yeah, that's me. Okay, I also wanted to add something to the conversation that I realized was missing when I listened back. I think that this is very anecdotal. I have no evidence of this. There's no data. It's not science. But I do think that it tends to be easier for men to make a conclusive decision about whether they want kids or not than it is for women. And I think that is directly related to the biological clock. And I don't think that you can have a conversation about this without considering that huge factor for women. Because of the narrowing biological clock for women to have their own children without intervention that can be incredibly expensive and is incredibly inaccessible, not to mention, doesn't always work and can take a huge toll on your body. I'm talking about like IVF and IUI and things like that, which are amazing, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of money to make those things happen. So in order for a woman to just biologically, naturally conceive and be pregnant and give birth, she's got to do it in a certain amount of time. I mean, we all know that. That's a reality. And I think because of that, it puts a lot of pressure on women to know for sure whether or not they want it. Because if they want it, their window is closing rapidly. Whereas for men, it's almost like they have the freedom to actually know what they want because they don't have a window. They don't have the time pressure. It's much easier for a man to be able to change his mind later in life because he's not the one with a biological clock limiting his ability to have a child. Women have a narrowing window, and it puts a lot of pressure on us to make that decision faster and younger and with less data and with less understanding of what our life is going to be, who our partner is going to be, what those circumstances are going to be. And I think it makes it so that it's a much harder decision for us. It's much easier for a man to say at 30 years old, yeah, I don't want kids, because he's not like bound to that. If he lives the next 5 years of his life, believing that he doesn't want kids and then at 38 changes his mind, that's okay. But for a woman to live 30 to 35 thinking she doesn't want kids and then change her mind, it's going to look very different for her to try to do that later. And so I don't know. I just think that that's important in this dialogue too, that there's a reason that there are so many stories of a man being clear and a woman not being sure. And I think it should be part of the dialogue that has everything to do with the biological clock. Basically what I'm saying is that the man, it doesn't really matter if he's sure or not. It doesn't really matter. He can change his mind whenever he wants. But yeah, for the woman, that decision is more final. All right. I've been recording for a really long time because I've taken a lot of breaks because my voice is on its last thread. Is that a phrase? What's the phrase? On its last chord? On its last vocal cord? Okay. I guess this is a complaint. I'd just like to file a complaint with pretty much all female home chefs on Instagram. The voice that you use for your voiceover, and it's actually less about the tone of voice and it's more about the scripting. Like the way that you choose to talk about the recipes that you're making on your Instagram reel, nobody talks like that. I feel like there's a very specific cadence and like sequencing of words and phrases and like just scripting and flow to how female home chefs on Instagram speak. and they've all started to sound the same. I think it started with this one girl. What's her name? She's like based in Brooklyn and she has blonde, short hair. I think her name is Justine. And if it's not, I don't care. And listen, her recipes look really great. And I think when she first started, her voiceover was kind of unique. Like, this is my impression of it. It's like lemon cookies are a staple in all Brooklyn homes. And I know that I'm not much of a Brooklyn girl, but I live in the East Village, and so it's basically the same thing. And so lemon cookie, like, guys, I need to go to sleep. You either know what I'm talking about or you think I'm crazy, and either way I'm comfortable with it. Go find Justine, if that is her real name, and listen to the way she talks as she prepares food that looks really tasty, and it probably is, and I'm not belittling her chef talents. And then just notice how everybody talks like that on Instagram reels where they're cooking sweet potatoes with chickpeas and kale, because I feel like those are the 3 ingredients that they use most of the time. And just then you'll understand my complaint, because I'm too tired to explain it. Was this an episode? I did an episode. This has been not for everyone. I can't come up with a quippy ending, so we're just going to call it. We're just going to call it. This has been your lover, Jess. You can find me on Instagram at JZDebakey, and you can find the podcast on Instagram at not4everyonepod. Watch Caroline on YouTube. Watch us on YouTube. We love you. Kisses and good night. I think the people in the hotel room above me are having sex, and I'm super happy for them. But it's distracting me. Okay.